Finally, I want to get both your takes on this. The White House released a statement on Tuesday night, ostensibly in response to a report from MSNBC that hadn't even aired yet, claiming that the network had access to one of the president's old tax returns. This is the statement from the White House. It's lengthy. I'm going to go ahead and read it. You know you are desperate for ratings when you are willing to violate the law to push a story about 2 pages of tax returns from over a decade ago. Before being elected president, Mr. Trump was one of the most successful businessmen in the world with a responsibility to his company, his family, and his employees to pay no more tax than legally required. That being said, Mr. Trump paid $38 million, even after taking into account large-scale depreciation for construction on an income of more than $150 million, as well as paying tens of millions of dollars in other taxes, such as sales and excise taxes and employment taxes. And this illegally published return proves just that. Despite this substantial income figure and tax paid, it is totally illegal to steal and publish tax returns. The dishonest media can continue to make this part of their agenda, while the president will focus on his, which includes tax reform that will benefit all Americans. So the backdrop to all of this, we know that lawmakers on both sides of the aisle have actually suggested they'd be open to subpoenaing the president's returns as part of their ongoing investigations into Russia's meddling in last year's election. Does Tuesday's report add any additional pressure on either the president to release the returns and on lawmakers themselves to press the administration on this issue? Michael, let me start with you.
Well, I'd be curious to hear what Yamiche has to say, because I think in a way this provides cover for Team Trump, which their premise is we can't get a fair break. That you've got people taking documents. If someone leaked yours or mine or your grandmother's tax returns, we'd be very angry about that. It's a very intimate piece of information about our lives. And here's Donald Trump's out there, and he paid a bunch of taxes, but it's this wouldn't happen. No one would. The argument you're going to hear from Trump supporters, I know from my years of talk radio, no one would have published Barack Obama's tax returns if this had been him. And so it lets him again play the "I can't get a fair break, so why should I cooperate" card, and provides him cover with people who are sympathetic towards it.
Yamiche, what do you think?
I think that, as someone who works for a publication who published what we could find about his tax returns, what's important here is that this is not my tax returns or your tax returns or your grandmother's. This is the president of the United States tax returns. This is someone who won office by claiming that he was a successful businessman, by claiming that he had really inherited but also multiplied all the money that his father gave him. So I think there is an enormous amount of pressure that is now going to continue to build for him to release his tax returns, and for congressmen and lawmakers to also ask him to release his tax returns, because it was really unprecedented when he refused to do that. And I think that for journalists, we're in some ways we're really filling we're really doing our jobs by going after this information, because it's something that for decades has been out there and has been normal for presidents to do.
But this is also illegal. I mean, once again, I'm not defending. I think Trump has decided he's going to ride this out for whatever reason. But the fact is, someone broke the law to release these documents. And for Trump supporters, their answer is, see, this is what happens if you're not on the right side. You're on the side of the elite media or the liberals or however they view the world. And that's why I think this happens. This helps him politically, regardless of how the media treats it or the inside Congress.
I think I think what you're saying is true, that Trump supporters are going to see this as someone who's talked to dozens of them on the campaign trail. But I also think Trump supporters, at least some of them, also get upset when we do fact checks, or when we say, hey, you know what, the president just lied, or when we say this is unprecedented, this is the way it was done before, this is the way it's being done now. So I think as a reporter, I can't think, okay, I'm going to do my job based on whether or not a Trump supporter is going to be angry at me. That's just not how the media works. The way that we work is to seek truth. Sure. And to find facts. And I think that, that whatever we do, it's going to be upsetting to Trump supporters, because a lot of them just don't want to see him be criticized at all.
But not everything is illegal. Once again, it's illegal. And the fact is, everyone knows that you could be a hero by stealing Donald Trump's tax returns and handing them to a newspaper tomorrow. And that bothers a lot of people who sided with Trump from the beginning, because they see this kind of fight of there's a separate set of rules for the Clintons and Obamas of the world versus how they feel about themselves and Trump as their representative.
Well, that's just the perception that I think a lot of people have, which is a perception that they're allowed to have. But I think it's wrong to say that if Hillary Clinton had refused to release her tax returns, that somehow the New York Times and everyone else would say, well, it's okay, it's Hillary Clinton and Obama, we won't go after their tax returns.
Well, once again, I'd be curious to know who would be releasing them and what the response would be if they did. I mean, look at how hard it was to get information about Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation, you know, and that was an ongoing story that let's face it, the press didn't work nearly as hard for as they are for the Trump tax returns.
I mean,
we'll have foreign governments that involve
disagree on that.
Well, and we can disagree, and that's totally fine. But there are people who perceive it that way.
I understand.
Let me ask you this, Michael. Should we infer anything from the fact that the White House released a preemptive statement ahead of this report?
You know, I'm one of the people who's thought from the beginning that Trump should release his tax returns because his supporters don't care. I mean, think about everything that they've been through already. And so I think whatever political hit it would have been, certainly now that he's president, you know, again, who cares? They've made this calculation. They work very hard on trying to pump up their base, have their base feel like they're backing a winner. Maybe that factors into it, but I'm just guessing at this point.
I mean, couldn't really the questions be put to rest, Michael, if in fact these were released, and at a time especially when you have something like health care really at the top of the agenda right now for Republicans?
Well, you know, we've got some great reporting by Selena Zito, who's covering kind of the home of Trump's voters in the Rust Belt. And she will tell you that what she hears is they just don't care about this tax business. Their attitude is he's a rich guy. They hope he took every break he could get. And I just don't think it resonates with a certain set of voters the way it does with, say, the folks in the media who are covering it.
Yeah. I'm just being handed something now. I am looking at a write-up of what is contained in this report that Donald Trump earned more than $150 million in the year 2005 and paid just a small percentage of that in regular federal income taxes. This is a Daily Beast write-up. Daily Beast contributor David K. Johnston has obtained what appear to be the first 2 pages of Trump's 2005 federal income tax return and published an analysis of those pages on his website, dcreport.org. The Daily Beast could not independently verify these documents. The documents show Trump and his wife Melania paying $5.3 million in regular federal income tax, a rate of less than 4%. However, the Trumps paid an additional $31 million in the so-called alternative minimum tax, or AMT. Trump has previously called for the elimination of this tax, and this piece goes on to then quote from the same statement which we read from the White House just a short time ago, in which you'll recall we just said, that being said, Mr. Trump paid $38 million. This is the White House statement now, even after taking into account large-scale depreciation for construction on an income of more than $150 million. So as we continue to sort of digest the significance of this, right now, though, I guess the bottom line, Michael and Yamiche, for people who are watching this now and understanding that there is currently a debate in Washington about an important item that affects their lives, and that is health care, and changing potentially the system that is currently in place to this possibly GOP plan as it stands now, or as the White House and Republicans have indicated, could be modified in some way, shape, or form. How much of a distraction are these continuing questions as you have Republicans trying to push forward this agenda item that in fact does touch on millions of Americans' lives? Yamiche, I'll start with you.
I mean, it's really tough because there's every day in some ways you see a new scandal or a new issue, a new controversy. When as my beat, I cover a lot of the social safety net issues. There are all these issues that are going to be hitting people at home. So I think there is somewhat of a distraction when we get caught up in a tweet, or when we get caught up in what an aide said on the morning TV, when in reality what we're going to see is not only the healthcare issue, but with the budget being released on Thursday, there's going to be a host of possible safety net issues cut, everything from housing subsidies to child care subsidies to rental assistance. So I think it's really tough for a lot of constituents who I think voted for Donald Trump mainly because they thought that he could really improve their lives. And I agree with the idea that they're not going to really care about his tax returns. When I talk to people I even want to say Democrats and people who supported Hillary Clinton, that they weren't voting for Hillary Clinton because they thought, well, Donald Trump isn't releasing his tax returns. It was mainly because every person that I talked to on the campaign trail really wanted a better health care. They wanted a better job. They wanted wages to be increased. And that's really what I think is at the top of a lot of people's people's minds. And I think that's where the disconnect is a lot of times.
And Michael, I mean, Trump supporters may not care, but lawmakers have clearly said on both sides of the aisle that they would be very interested to see his tax returns, because you could also have potentially things like foreign income listed there that would help clarify whatever ties there may or may not have been with countries like Russia.
And of course, right now, there are Trump-affiliated organizations doing business in China right now, and around the world. And the people who elected Trump knew that. And whether I like it or not, their attitude, they just factored that in. And that's why when you say it's a distraction, I mean, you could argue that President Trump's entire presidency is designed to work off of distractions, and that this is all the sleight of hand flash stuff so that you aren't paying attention to the things Yamiche just talked about, which is what are the outcomes of these legislative ideas? How do they work? Who's going to win and who's going to lose? And so it could be the case that Donald Trump loves the fact that people are talking about how much money he made 10, 12, whatever it was years ago, and not focusing on this budget that's coming out that's going to be unlike any budget we've seen in the modern era, I predict.
All right, before we let you go, we're going to just read one more time a bit from this White House statement. It's a lengthy one. Again, this was a statement released before this report on MSNBC. This is what it says, a lengthy statement from the White House. You know you are desperate for ratings when you are willing to violate the law to push a story about 2 pages of tax returns from over a decade ago. Before being elected president, Mr. Trump was one of the most successful businessmen in the world, with a responsibility to his company, his family, and his employees to pay no more tax than legally required. That being said, Mr. Trump paid $38 million, even after taking into account large-scale depreciation for construction on an income of more than $150 million, as well as paying tens of millions of dollars in other taxes, such as sales and excise taxes and employment taxes, and this illegally published return proves just that. Despite this substantial income figure and tax paid, it is totally illegal to steal and publish tax returns. The dishonest media can continue to make this part of their agenda, while the president will focus on his, which includes tax reform that will benefit all Americans. And with that, my thanks to Yamiche Alcindor and Michael Graham in Washington. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.